Our goal is to organize protests to break through the wall of propaganda that we're seeing across US and Western media broadly. What we consider a project of manufacturing consent for a genocide in Gaza. That's what we're witnessing on the political level with the political class, from Biden, his speech today, to the media class all throughout the US and the West broadly. I think his name is Mike Lyons. He was on CNN. He was asked by Anderson Cooper, who's like choking up when talking about what's happened to Israelis. He was asked, what is it going to take, a ground invasion? What would that look like? He's like, the collateral damage would be thousands, tens of thousands, potentially hundreds of thousands of Palestinians. And there was no pushback, no questioning. He said, this is the amount of collateral damage we have not seen since World War II. It really is terrifying to hear, and especially the frenzy across the media, right? The rape stories, 40 babies being beheaded. You know what I mean? What is that meant to gin up? That there is no bounds for the response that must be inflicted on the babies in Gaza.
Yeah.
Right? So if you decapitate their heads, it's proportional. That's what's being generated. The point of it is to numb you to accept this reality. That's all it means. It's like, in order for you to accept it, you have to see these people as less than humans. It's in the same way that, for example, you could, for a person who's like, that eats meat, like that isn't vegan, for example, or isn't vegetarian. So you see someone like a factory that slaughters animals. If he doesn't feel like any sort of way towards that, then he can see that and watch that without any issue, right? It's the same concept here. If Palestinians are dehumanized to the point where they're pathologized, where they're rapists, where they behead babies, where they are vile and crazed and evil, the embodiment of evil, right? Like description that takes place. The goal of it is for people to not sympathize with the Palestinians, to see them as worthy of genocide. If you kill 2.3 million Palestinians, or you kill 100,000, if need be, then it makes sense. To the extent that you save 600 or 700 or 1,000 Israelis. Because what is unacceptable is that Israelis have died. Not that Palestinians have been subjected to occupation and death. That's acceptable and the norm, and it's the status quo. It is calm. It is calm. It is the reestablishment of calm. Colonial situations create violence, period. The situation itself is violent, right? In order to put a fence around the people, in order to keep them in that fence, in order to deny them their food, medicine, you have to inflict a severe degree of violence. And to prevent them from revolting, you have to inflict a severe degree of violence. You have to throw them in cages. You have to torture them. You have to drop bombs on them regularly. And so the situation for Palestinians, and this is what is crazy, and you hear this, obviously the cameras turned on when that violence touched Israeli lives, right? But this violence is ever present for Palestinians, ever present. If it's not the actual violence, it's the threat of violence. You have these writers, so-called left-wing writers, say, oh, what if they just did this peaceful march, right? What if they had a Gandhi for them, right? As though that hasn't been tried, as though 2018 Palestinians were systematically
I was just
disabled,
that.
Disfigured systematically, right? As though that hasn't already been tried. And yet, when Palestinians, the notion that they may defend themselves, that they might fight back, that's already assumed off limits. And occupation under international law, established through the post-World War II era, stipulates that occupied people have a right to resist through armed struggle.
Okay, yes. This is so important. I think that you constantly hear people saying, doesn't Israel have the right to defend itself? And the truth is that Palestinians are the ones with the right to defend themselves.
Absolutely.
Under international law.
Right.
Yeah.
Palestinians under international law have the right to defend themselves. But even if there was no international law, you're going to defend yourself if you're facing. But you're right. No, but if you're facing an existential context, right, where someone's telling you, I'm going to drive you out of your country, you're going to defend yourself, and you have a right to defend yourself. For us, it was to signal to the rest of the world and to our communities here that the grassroots, the diverse communities of these different cities, the progressive movements support Palestine. And support Palestine because here's the thing. As far as the attacks go, there's a bunch of different things that have happened during these last attacks in Israel. But the most fundamental and most important thing for us as Palestinians is that Palestinians broke out of Gaza. Okay? That alone is something that's monumental for us. Why? Because it's a prison break. You know what I mean? When you have people who are completely trapped, they're besieged, they're blockaded, land, air, and sea, food, medicine, construction material, everything that goes in and out is controlled. Okay? When those people, some of them have never lived outside or visited outside of Gaza. They've not seen the rest of Palestine. They've not seen the coast of what is called modern day Israel, where they're from. And these people have never seen it for generations, the rest of Palestine. And so it was a prison break. So for us as Palestinians, this is important. Now, getting into the weeds of what transpired afterwards in the propaganda that's been spread, you have to, it's almost impossible to parse through. But at the end of the day, we support our right, the right of our people to break out of prison. Okay? The right of our people to break out of a concentration camp, to revolt against military rule. That's fundamental.